You're listening to The Bart Factor with your host, Bart Robley.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 4 of my podcast, The Bart Factor. I am your host, Bart Robley. Before we get started today, I want to give a shout out and actually a shameless self-promotion plug to my website and the sponsor of this podcast, and that is drummerswag.com. If you are a drummer or you have a friend or a relative that is a drummer, please check out drummerswag.com. We have a lot of fun things on there, a lot of cool t-shirts, some fun coffee mugs and stuff like that, and a lot of great educational material on there for drummers to study and help get your playing together. Today what I want to talk about is being a full-time musician and going full-time and kind of knowing when it's time to make that leap of faith and become a full-time musician. So the motivational quote at the very beginning of the podcast here is being self-employed isn't a career choice, it is a lifestyle choice. And I completely and totally agree with that. Being a full-time musician to me is just fantastic. It's something that I've been able to achieve and do for about 20 years now. But what I had to do before I did that was I worked a day job like a lot of great musicians out there do. And I had to take a realistic look at myself and at my playing and at my ability to make a living as a musician and think to myself, can I realistically do this? Can I make a living as a musician and support myself and support my wife and do my share to provide income for our household? And so anyway, so for some of the younger players out there, or for some people that aren't even necessarily younger, they're adult players, but they want to make that leap of faith, I'm going to give you guys some tips here that I did and that I realistically looked at myself to see if, hey man, can I really do this? When is it time to go full time? I guess would be a good way to put it. And can you really make a living at it? Those are the two biggest questions that I asked myself. And the first one of, when was it time to go full time? Well, I don't know. I just got to a point in my life where I was wearing so many different hats as, just in life, as a player and holding down a full-time job and as a teacher. And I was writing books at the time. I was doing all kinds of stuff. I was writing articles for drum magazines and it just, something had to give. And so I made the decision that, it was now or never. And so I went in and gave my notice at my job, and it was probably the scariest day of my life because I had a great job. I had a fantastic job. I'll talk about that more at the end of the podcast. But I worked for some great people. I had a great job, and they were really supportive of me. And they were also supportive of me leaving. And I think that was really important because it wasn't like it was a secret that they knew that that's what I wanted to do with my life, because that's what I spent all of my time when I wasn't at work doing. I was either doing gigs or teaching or going out on the road, and I'd use all my vacation time to go on the road and stuff like that. And like I said, something just had to give. It got to the point where it was like I just couldn't do it all. And so I took the leap of faith. The first thing that I did, though, when I took the leap of faith was I asked myself, am I solely trying to make a living as a performer? Is my band providing enough income for me as the group that I was working with and that I'm still working with to this day, the Sam Morrison Band? At the time, was it making enough money for me to just make a living alone from that? And at the time, the answer was no, it wasn't. So I had to realistically look again at multiple sources of income as a musician. How could I make that happen? So what I did was I looked at my other sources of income that I had from being a drummer. And it wasn't just from performances. A big part of my income came from teaching. And I gave a lot of drum lessons. I've been giving drum lessons for years and years and years. And, so is that an area where you could make a living as a teacher, as an educator in the music business, in the drumming world? And if you can do that and you are doing that, great. If you're not doing that and that's something that you want to do, I advise you to really, really look at yourself and look at, first of all, your ability to teach. Can you convey your thoughts well to another person to make them not only be able to play something, can you explain it? You're trying to explain a part to somebody, but are you motivational enough? And more importantly, are you patient enough? Sometimes it takes a tremendous amount of patience to get a young person, especially sometimes little kids, to be motivated enough and to practice hard enough and to want to move forward with their music and with the things that they want to do musically. You've got to be able to motivate people, and again, you've got to be able to be patient with them. Are you able to do that? If you're going to be a teacher, I've had teachers before where you could tell a couple of things. Number one, that, they were just teaching until they got their big break and they became a famous drummer. And man, if you're doing that, you're going about it wrong. You've got to really like to teach. You've got to really like to see people reach their set goals and reach their goals and to be part of their journey. If you're just teaching, again, until you get your big break, that's kind of the wrong way, I think, to go about it. I remember a number of years ago, I was taking, and where it really hit me with that, it was a number of years ago, and I talked about this in a previous podcast. I was taking a lesson with Greg Bissonette, and I was at his house, and he was, there's all these platinum records on the wall from David Lee Roth and different things that he had done and posters of him from Modern Drummer. And he was telling me, man, I'm a little bit tired because I just got home from Europe. I played with Spinal Tap, the world's loudest band, at Wembley Stadium. And I remember it hit me right then and there. I was like, I really don't think Greg is giving me a drum lesson right now because he needs the money. I don't know what his financial situation is, but he's truly doing this because he loves teaching. He loves seeing people set goals and reach goals and help them with their musical endeavors and aspirations. So if you want to be a teacher, make sure that you can do it, and make sure that you want to do it, and make sure you want to do it for the right reasons. I think that is really important. One of the things as a professional musician that you're going to be called upon to do is read music. So you got to ask yourself, can I read music? And what I mean by that is, you're not always going to be reading music on gigs. Let's say you play in a rock band and you got to, let's say you have a couple of bands. Chances are pretty good when you're out there playing with bands that you're normally working with, you're not going to be reading the music. You're not going to have charts on stage. But your ability to read music is a big deal, because what if you get called upon to do some session work, and you've got to read down a chart or a transcription? What if you get called upon to play a church gig and it's Sunday morning and you get the call Friday night, and you got a gig on Friday and you got a gig on Saturday, so you don't really have time to practice for the church gig. But the worship leader says, don't worry about it. Come on down. I've got transcriptions. I got charts, and the gig pays $100 or whatever. Are you going to be able to do that? Are you going to be able to read through the charts and make those songs come to life? So make sure that you can read. If you can't read and you've been playing for a while, go get some lessons. Learn how to read. Even if I think just learning the basics, knowing how to read something and sit down and play it and be able to convey the thought, musically is very important. I always talk about reading music is like reading any language, right? When you speak a language, when you go to learn to speak a language, let's say you want to learn Spanish, you're not going to go to a Spanish class and say to the teacher, I just want to speak it. I don't want to read it and write it. They're going to look at you like you're crazy. You have to know how to speak and read and write Spanish if you're going to be fluent in the language. And I feel the same way about music. If you can play your instrument but you can't read music, you really should learn how to do that. I remember one time I was taking a drum lesson with the great Tony Pia. Tony has played with the Brian Setzer Orchestra, and he is now one of the members of the Doobie Brothers. And we were talking about swing. We were talking about jazz. And he says to me, he goes, Bart, if you can't swing and you can't play some good swing in jazz, you're cutting your options in half, because music does one of two things. It's either a driven feel or it's a swung feel. It's, those are the two things that they do, that it does, And I was like, wow, that really made a lot of sense. And so I really started working on my swing and started working on jazz and stuff like that because I didn't want to cut my options in half. Now, I don't know if you can't read, if you're cutting your options in half, but I know you're cutting down. You're cutting down on your ability to do something. You're cutting down your options, your ability to make a living. So I can't stress it enough. I think it's really important to know how to read music and know how to read some charts and also how to transcribe, because one of the sources of income that I get is from transcriptions. And it comes from two places. Sometimes people will have a song that they want the drum part transcribed for them, whether it be a drum student or somebody hires me to do a transcription for a song for a session for a different drummer. I have that ability. I can transcribe the music. I have music software that I use, and I sit there and listen, sometimes painstakingly, to a song to get to figure out what the drummer did, or what the drummer should do, and then I transcribe it out, and I can sell that. It's a source of income, or I do a lot of session work, and a lot of the session work that I do are re-records for commercial use in music, for music in movies and television and jingles and stuff like that. And since it's a re-record, I may have to reproduce a drum part that was recorded years ago, but they want it exactly like the original. They just want it to sound better. For whatever reason, they want it re-recorded. So not only do I transcribe it, but then I can go in and read that transcription in the session and record and make a living or make some income there. So can you transcribe? Can you read? And can you do session work? That in and of itself is a podcast, doing session work. But do you have the ability, and do you have, to do those things? Read, play with the click, and do you know people that can get you session work? Do you have some friends that are engineers, or do you know a producer? Nowadays, a lot of people, you can record records in your bedroom nowadays with on a computer. But again, a whole nother podcast there in and of itself. But do you have people that will hire you to do session work? So ask yourself that. That's another good viable way for income to come in as session work. The other thing you want to look at is just lifestyle choices. Am I married? Do I have kids? Do I have a mortgage? Do I have car payments? Can I make all those things from income, from the income that I get from a musician before you make the leap? You don't want to quit your job and then all of a sudden go, well, gosh, the mortgage is due, tomorrow, and I got $50 in my account, and I got to go buy diapers and stuff like that. So make sure that you look into those things, because I've seen people do that and not think those things through. So think those things through. Another big one that I think people kind of forget about, and this is something that is very important, and that is, do you have and can you afford to have health care insurance for yourself and for your family? Now, some some musicians out there are married and their spouse works a job that allows them to have get their insurance through their spouse's work. But healthcare insurance is a big deal. And again, I don't want to get in a political debate and all that stuff here on my podcast, but healthcare insurance is a big deal. And for myself, my wife and I are both self-employed, so we have to pay our own healthcare insurance. And believe me when I tell you, it is costly. Do you have insurance? Because, God forbid somebody gets sick or something happens, but you don't want to not have those things. You don't want to not have healthcare insurance. And that really is a big deal. So, can I afford that? Can I get that? I've had some people, some of my friends belong to the musicians union, and they get calls from the union to do everything I've been talking about, to do gigs, to do session work. I believe, I'm not 100% sure on this because I am not a union member, but I think you can get insurance through the union. If you're listening to this and you know the answer to that, please leave it below. I'd love to know. I personally don't belong to the union, but I do think that for some people it's a good thing. And if you do belong to the union, or you're thinking about going and signing up for the musicians union, let's go back to what I was saying a minute ago. If the union calls and says, okay, we got you a session gig that pays scale, and you got to be at Universal Studios Friday afternoon at 1:00, and you'll get paid scale for 3 hours, and everything. Well, okay, great, but can you read music? If you can't read music, I would definitely suggest not signing up for the musicians union, because you more than likely, if not for 100%, will be called upon to read music. Another one that I think, and social media has changed this a lot, and it's really helped people a lot. But are you good at self-promotion? Can you promote yourself as a musician, on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, all those things? Do you have a website? Are you able to work those things? Some people, through no fault of their own, they're musicians and they're great players, but maybe they're a little bit introverted and they don't want to be on social media. They don't want to, they're not good about talking about themselves. Myself, I'm the exact opposite. I'll stand up and go, hey, look at me, hire me, and jump up and down in the corner, to get somebody's attention. But not everybody's that way. And you can't fault people for that. That's just who they are. Some people don't like to talk about themselves or promote themselves. They just kind of want to, be the guy over in the corner that does his job and does it very well, but doesn't like to talk about it. If you're going to be self-employed as a musician, you've got to be able to promote yourself. Are you good at self-promotion? And again, I'm kind of repeating myself, but all the social media stuff for me, right here, hopefully you're listening to my podcast and you're listening to it all the way through, I hope. And, on YouTube, YouTube is definitely one of the most viable things out there. Are you able to do stuff like this? Are you able to sit down and do a podcast or to do a video or whatever, and then promote it? It's a viable source of income and a viable way of promoting yourself and your ability to play an instrument or to be a drummer or whatever it is that you happen to be, whatever it is you happen to do. And then the last thing that I kind of want to say in regards to when it's time to make the leap of faith again, or the jump, you just got to kind of go on a leap of faith. But I want to say to some of the people out there, having a day job is not necessarily a bad thing, especially if you have a good day job, and you have somebody a company that stands behind you, or a company that you've worked for a long time, and you have a lot of vacation time saved up for, and you have sick time and all those things, and you have insurance, and you have 401ks, and you have, all that sort of stuff, maybe you're going to get a pension when you retire. You want to make sure that you don't just throw that away. All that stuff is so important. I used to work for a great company by the name of Orange County Speaker. They're no longer around, but they were just awesome. The Sunda family who owned the company was just fantastic. It was a family-run business from I believe it was 1968 is when they started, and they were a speaker company. They fixed and built speaker cabinets of every sort, of big PA speakers to home audio speakers to car audio. They did it all, and they were a great company to work for, and they were very, very, very supportive of me and my music, and supportive of what it was that I wanted to do when I still worked a day job. They provided me with insurance, they provided me with income, and a lot of times I would go to them and I would just say, hey, I need to take off for 2 weeks to go on tour, and I'd use my vacation time, and they never batted an eye, and they always had a place for me. They were a great company and great people. And if you have something like that and you are a working musician, I know it's really easy to have the dream of, I just want to play full time. That's all I want to do. I just want to play full time, and that'll make me happy. But once you get out there in the real world and you're really out there playing, and you really realize how hard it is and how many different hats you have to wear as a musician to make a living and to have income from it, it can be a little bit daunting. It can be one of those things where, man, this is just not an easy thing. So if you have a company or some people that stand behind you on a day job, don't take that for granted, because it is a very important thing. And being self-employed isn't for everybody. Like I said at the beginning, that motivational quote that was, it's not a career choice, it's a lifestyle choice. one of the things about being self-employed that is a lifestyle choice, the good thing is I don't have to really answer to like a boss per se. Now I've got people I have to answer to. I'm fortunate that I have one main gig. I don't have a bunch of bands that I play for. I do play for other bands, but my main gig is the Sam Morrison Band, and I have to answer to the people in that band. I have to answer to Sam. I have to make sure that I do my share of the work and help run my share of the business. But I don't necessarily have a boss per se. I don't punch a time card or a time clock or anything like that. But I have people I have to answer to. But what I give up for that is all the security of a day job. Again, the 401ks, the pension, the insurance, all those sort of stuff. So at times that can be kind of scary, though. At times it can be. Well, gosh, I'm not getting any younger, and this is how much I have for retirement, and I don't want to work until I drop over dead. So gosh, I got to start saving money, or again, back to the insurance thing, all that sort of stuff. It all adds up. So working a day job is not necessarily a bad thing. So if you have a good day job, hey man, really before you make that leap, really think all these things through. And again, this is just advice for people who want to do it. And if you want to do it bad enough, and it's kind of like I tell all of my students, if you really want to do this bad enough, you'll find a way to do it. And if you really, you really want to be a great player, the only thing you can do to become a great player is practice and become a great player. Put it into practice. But if you want to find a way to do it, you can do it. And if you really want to find a way to do it and you work at it long and hard enough, things, will line themselves up for you. And you kind of have to make your own luck, but the things will line themselves up for you, and you can make it happen. So hopefully some of these tips and some of these things were, more food for thought, but hopefully they were helpful to you. And I hope you liked what you heard here. And if you did, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and leave a comment below. Please don't forget to check out my website, my personal website. If you have questions about drum lessons, bartrobley.com, and also my other website, drummerswag.com. So again, the last thing I'll say, the shameless self-promotion. I just gave my two websites right there. Drummerswag.com is again for the t-shirts and the drummer swag stuff and the educational material. But if you are somebody that wants to take some drum lessons, and let's say you fit into that category I was talking about, that you're a player, but you want to learn how to read and you don't know how to read, please look me up, send me an email. I would love to get together with you and help you out. And if you need some help with reading or anything like that, send me an email, and we can get together, and I'll get you hooked up with some lessons and kind of work with you on some reading, or if you want to work on different styles, just whatever, send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for listening, and please check back for future podcasts of the Bart Factor. And once again, if you like this, please subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next episode of the Bart Factor.